Hello, I'm Maddie Dalrymple, and welcome to From Expertise to Authority, where we examine how you can build your professional presence for a sideline or second act. More resources are available at theindyauthor.com, and that's Indie with a Y, including a downloadable worksheet you can use to document your journey from expertise to authority. In this episode, we'll be exploring Found in Translation, how to build a master source of content and deploy it strategically across formats and audiences. If you'd like to read the text version or watch the video version of this content, you'll find those at Maddie Dalrymple on Substack and on YouTube. We've explored how the process of making your expertise concrete, writing it down, structuring it, finding the right examples, is itself a creative act. The thinking and the writing aren't separate steps, they happen together. Once you've done that work, though, you face a practical question. How do you get that content in front of different audiences in different formats without starting from scratch every time? What is the start from scratch trap? Let's say you write a strong piece of content, then someone invites you to speak on the topic. Do you open a blank presentation and start building from zero? Next, you're invited as a podcast guest. Do you spend an hour preparing as if you've never discussed this material before? If you decide to write a book, do you stare at a blank document, wondering where to begin? If yes, each time you're doing the hardest part of the work, organizing ideas, finding the right examples, structuring the argument all over again. And each new version exists in isolation. Improvements made to the presentation don't feed back into the written version, and insights from the podcast conversation don't find their way into either. The assumption driving this pattern is that each format requires completely new content. It doesn't. What each format requires is a different expression of the same core content, and that's a more manageable job than creating something new. It's translation, not creation. The most efficient approach I've found is to maintain two master sources that contain a comprehensive version of your content from which everything else is derived. In practice, it usually works well to maintain two complementary masters, a long-form source, a book manuscript or a comprehensive set of written pieces, and a short-form source, for example, a presentation deck, a set of interview talking points, or structured summary. My long-form master for From Expertise to Authority is my book manuscript. My short-form master is a comprehensive presentation deck. They serve different purposes, but both contain the fullest expression of my thinking, and when I refine an idea in one, I carry that improvement to the other. The format matters less than the principle. You have a place where the definitive version of your content lives. When you need to create something new, a talk, a pitch, a written piece, you're selecting and adapting from existing material rather than generating from scratch. And if you refine your thinking when a Q&A session identifies a question you hadn't considered or a consulting engagement reveals a gap in your framework, you update the masters, and that improvement is available to every future expression of the content. What was my path through the content? I first began to formulate the From Expertise to Authority framework when I started seeing commonalities among some of my consulting clients, senior professionals who were looking for ways to establish their authority in a particular area. I knew I wanted to parlay that experience into an offering focused specifically on that need. I originally started by drafting an outline that I anticipated would become the basis for a presentation, but I realized that I needed to write out my thoughts more completely to think through them carefully. That realization led to a shift from constructing a presentation to drafting articles, which I knew from the start would form the basis of an eventual book. As I wrote the articles, I extracted key concepts and bullet points, not only for presentation purposes, but also for an accompanying worksheet that would help people track their own journey from expertise to authority. An offering that, while free, I anticipated would lead people to purchase the eventual book or would serve as an introduction to my consulting and speaking services. In fact, I realized I could use the worksheet for longer workshop presentations. New ways to add value to my desired audience emerged with little extra work required by me. Translating the content from one format to another required real work because the formats have fundamentally different requirements. But the intellectual work was done. I wasn't deciding what to say, I was deciding how to say it for each particular medium. AI tools can accelerate this translation. I found value in feeding written content to an AI and asking it to distill the key points into slide-ready language, then giving it more direction, like make it less wordy or adjust the examples to be more applicable to writers and so on, before copying the output into a working document and continuing to refine. Each content format has its own rules, and respecting those rules is part of what makes repurposed content feel natural rather than recycled. Presentation material should carry the structure of your argument, key phrases and frameworks, not the full text. The explanation is what you deliver verbally. The slide gives the audience something to anchor to. When I adapted my discussion of identifying your expertise into slides, the three challenges, too broad, can't see what's valuable, disconnected, became a single slide with 3 bullets, not the paragraphs of explanation from the written version. Books need connective tissue that standalone pieces don't. Transitions between ideas, callbacks to earlier material, a cumulative arc. Interviews invite stories, asides, and spontaneity that would feel out of place in written content. I use the framework as my backbone, but let the conversation go wherever the host's questions lead. The best interviews add something the written version can't, the human texture of thinking out loud. Consulting is the most adaptive format because you're tailoring content to one person's specific situation. The master source provides the framework, the consulting conversation applies it. This is often where new insights emerge that feed back into the master. Presentations deserve special attention because they illustrate one of the most powerful applications of the master source principle, tailoring content to different audiences by selection rather than recreation. My comprehensive From Expertise to Authority deck contains slides for every topic and example I might use, far more content than I would ever present in a single engagement. It's designed as a superset from which any specific engagement can be assembled, whether that's a keynote or a day-long workshop. When I'm preparing for a particular engagement, I don't build a new slide deck. I review the master and I hide the slides that aren't relevant to this audience, this time slot, this event's focus. Speaking to a group of nonfiction authors, I keep the slides on platform selection and content strategy. I hide the ones on corporate consulting. Presenting to a professional association whose members are considering second acts, I emphasize the expertise, identification, and objective setting slides, and hide the detailed publishing platform comparison. By having everything in one place, when I improve a slide by refining the language or coming up with a more effective example, I improve it once in the master deck, and that improvement is available for every future presentation. And here's a pro tip. After customizing a presentation for a specific event, export it as a PDF. The PDF serves double duty as a handout for attendees and as a historical record of exactly which slides you shared with that group. Your next step? If you've been creating content around your expertise, even a few written pieces or a rough set of speaking notes, you already have the raw material for the master source. Start by identifying where your most comprehensive expression of your ideas currently lives. Is it in a long piece of writing, a detailed outline, a set of presentation slides? That's your starting point. Then ask where the next natural opportunity lies. If you've been writing and someone asks you to speak, your written content is your master source for building a presentation. If you've been speaking and want to start writing, your slide deck and speaker notes are your master source for drafting. The hard work, the thinking, the structuring, the refining, only needs to happen once. Everything after that is a matter of translation. If you'd like to read the article this episode is based on, you'll find that at Substack at Maddie Dalrymple. And if you'd like support developing a personalized pathway from expertise to authority for yourself, please check out my consulting service at theindieauthor.com/authority. And if you're an event organizer, I would love to share with your community a framework they can use to develop their own path. And if you'd like to get in touch, just drop me a note at maddie@maddiedalrymple.com. Thank you for listening.